Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you tonight. Russia claims to have shot down US-made long-range missiles that were fired from Ukraine. The escalation comes days after President Biden gave Ukraine the long-sought permission to use these missiles. Putin warns of a nuclear response if Ukraine uses Western missiles to hit Russia. Stock markets decline across Europe and the US. The Sensex and the Nifty snap a 7-day losing streak, but a late sell-off wipes out most of the gains. Mid-caps outperformed today. Snap Inc.'s global CEO Evan Spiegel says there is a hunger in the US for a new vision after the victory of Donald Trump. Adds he's excited by the India opportunity and is betting big on augmented reality. Says Snapchat does not have a negative impact on mental health, unlike other social media platforms. That's an exclusive. Meta opposes CCI's 213 crore penalty order for anti-competitive practices, says it plans to appeal against it. The regulator ruled that Meta's 2021 WhatsApp policy update on a take-it-or-leave-it basis is an imposition of unfair conditions. Meta claims that users were not forced to accept the update. Insurance stocks slide a day after the finance minister advises banks to focus on core banking activities and not burden customers with insurance policies they do not require. IRDA chief warns of mis-selling, says banks should provide the right products at the right price. In a bid to curb the exuberance, market regulator SEBI proposes to tighten rules for smaller companies to list on Dalal Street. Nearly 750 SMEs have listed so far, with a market cap of nearly 2 lakh crore rupees. A CNBC TV18 newsbreak has confirmed Adani Group to pay 685 crore rupees for a 30% stake in Ahmedabad headquartered infra company PSP Projects. This will trigger an open offer. Sources say the Adani Group is eyeing a 60% stake in the company. Air pollution in Delhi and large parts of North India remains near record highs. All schools and colleges go online. Multiple flights disrupted due to the lack of visibility. The state's environment minister seeks the union government's clearance for artificial rains. High drama in Maharashtra on the eve of voting. Workers of the Bahujan Vikas Aghadi accused BJP's National General Secretary Vinod Tawade of distributing cash to voters even as he denies charges. The Election Commission stops Tawade from holding press conferences and files an FIR against him. The Delhi High Court summons ChatGPT maker OpenAI after news agency ANI files a case of copyright infringement. This is the first lawsuit against OpenAI in India, which is facing a similar case in the US filed by the New York Times and other publications. For the first time, 5 lakh passengers take to the skies on the 17th of November, a record high in India over a 24-hour period. Indigo accounted for 70% of the domestic flights. D. Gukesh could become the youngest world champion, says Indian chess grandmaster and 5-time world champion Vishwanathan Anand. Also warns Gukesh against getting carried away by the stellar run he's had this year. That's another exclusive tonight. Well, let's head to the top story this evening. In what could be a serious escalation in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, Moscow has claimed to have shot down a US-made long-range missile. Now, this comes just days after the US President Joe Biden allowed Ukraine to use the long-range missile to strike Russia's Kursk region. This is the region where Russia had deployed soldiers from North Korea. Stock markets across Europe and the US tumbled today. Also marks 1,000 days since the war began in Ukraine. Now, as these reports trickled in, a Kremlin spokesperson held a press conference and announced a significant change to the country's nuclear doctrine. President Putin has signed a new doctrine which allows Russia to engage in a nuclear response if Ukraine uses Western missiles to strike its territory. Here's the Kremlin spokesperson speaking about the new nuclear doctrine.
It was necessary in order to adapt, to ensure an adaptation of our nuclear vision into realities of the modern day. What is the most striking example of the realities of the modern day? Authority in the White House in the United States takes a decision to use their weapon, American-produced weapons, against the Russian Federation. It's a striking example of new environment around our country. And it makes it necessary for us.
Well, that's a spokesperson of the Kremlin. Now, the Wall Street snapping its 7-day losing streak today. However, we did see a late sell-off, which saw the Nifty and the Sensex wipe out most of those gains. Now, the fall was largely on account of reports of Ukraine's strike inside Russia. Like global markets, the Sensex also fell, as did the Nifty. In fact, the Sensex fell 900 points, coming off its intraday high, closing about 239 points higher, so just about closing in the green. The Nifty fell over 200 points. Both the indices ended 0.25% higher. Broader markets outperforming the blue chips today, but that's the story coming off intraday highs on the back of the escalation of tensions in Ukraine. Oil prices fell after yesterday's rally, which was driven by halted production at a Norway oil field. The fall was on account of investors remaining cautious amidst fears of a potential escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war. Brent is around the $72 per barrel mark, so there is some movement there on account of geopolitical changes. The situation in West Asia continues to remain tense. Israeli forces have killed at least 5 people in central Beirut. This was in retaliation to Hezbollah's strike that killed 6 people in Tel Aviv. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu is pledged to continue to systematically operate against Hezbollah, even if a ceasefire deal is reached. Meanwhile, the UN Middle East envoy said the current conditions in Gaza are amongst the worst seen during the entire war. Speaking at the UN Security Council, he added that the entire region is at a grim crossroad. Well, back home, the union government has revised the capital restructuring norms for state-run companies after 8 years. The dividend payout rule has been relaxed, but rules governing buybacks and bonus have been tightened. Here's the DPAM Secretary Tuhin Kantapande speaking to Sapna on the implications of these new norms. Take a look.
In the minimum guidelines, there were 2 conditions. One was the net worth, another was the payout of the profit. So you have 30% of the profit, PAT.
That remains unchanged.
That remains the same. The other condition was that there were 2 conditions, whichever was higher, 30% of PAT or 5% of net worth, whichever was higher. We have made it 4% of net worth instead of 5%.
That is the DPAM Secretary. Now, NTPC Green Energy's initial public offer has seen strong appetite on day one. The IPO saw a roaring response from the retail investors. With that portion being fully subscribed within hours, the company plans to raise 10,000 crore rupees via a fresh issue. The IPO will be open till the 22nd of November, and the company is set to be listed on the 27th of November. Now, CNBC TV 18 Newsbreak is confirmed Adani Infra will acquire 30% stake in Ahmedabad-headquartered PSP projects for 685 crore rupees from the company's promoters. CNBC TV 18 had reported earlier that Adani Group was looking to buy around 60% stake in the company. The deal, if completed, will trigger an open offer for a minimum 26% public shareholding. So that is now official. Honasa Consumer shares plunging for day 2, losing 11% in trade. This is the company's first loss in 5 quarters, continued to fan demand concerns for the beauty products retailer. The 2-day sell-off has pulled the company's market cap below the $1 billion. Honasa Consumer stock has fallen 53% from its 52-week high and is now 18% below its listing price. Insurance stocks declined a day after the finance minister advised banks to focus on core banking activities and not burden customers with insurance policies that they do not require. Yash reports on the finance minister's comments and how it could impact industry. Take a look.
We saw it at the annual SBI conclave. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman cautioned banks against mis-selling of insurance products and asked them to focus on core business. FM went on to say that this has contributed indirectly in increasing the cost of borrowing for customers.
Banks will have to look at it with a lot more emphasis on their core banking activities and not burden customers with insurances which they don't require.
These remarks could throw a spanner into insurance regulators' vision of insurance for all by 2047. The IRDAI chairperson responded to the finance minister today. While he admitted that mis-selling has become a problem, he also added that banks provide an important channel for the sale of insurance products.
The banker channel is a very useful channel, but of late, a lot of ills have crept into the system. I think we all need to sit together, thrash out that so that we restore that confidence.
Insurers get a large part of their business from banks' distribution channels, and hence any uncertainty on that distribution creates uncertainty on that large portion of business. SBI Life Insurance will be the worst affected as it gets 60% of its business from bancassurance channel, that is State Bank of India. And since SBI is a public sector bank, it would be easier for the government to ask SBI to focus on its core banking operations over insurance products. LIC only got 4% of its business in H1 FY25 and hence would be the least impacted here. ICICI Prudential Life Insurance got 29% of its business from bancassurance. ICICI Bank is only selling small ticket premium products like the term life insurance products, and hence the business would largely remain insulated. HDFC Life gets 65% and Max Life gets 52% of its business from bancassurance, that is HDFC Bank and Axis Bank primarily, and hence the threat for them is still very limited, as these private banks, we still don't know how much would a government advisory impact their business. In Mumbai, Yash Jain.
Now, market regulator SEBI has proposed to tighten rules governing smaller companies to list on the large street. The move comes after 745 companies have gone public using the SME IPO route and now command a market capitalization of nearly 2 lakh crore rupees. The new proposals include a doubling of the minimum application size in a bid to curb the exuberance. SEBI has invited public comments till the 4th of December. So the IPO frenzy in the SME market certainly had the regulator concerned, and some measures now being proposed there. The government has reinstated subsidies for electric three-wheelers under the PM e-Drive scheme. This move comes after the annual subsidy allocation for electric three-wheelers in FY25 was exhausted. The Ministry of Heavy Industries has now sanctioned more funds for electric three-wheelers from the overall outlay of the PM e-Drive scheme. Stang storage company Aegis Vopak Terminals has plans to raise 3,500 crore rupees via an IPO. The company's filed its DRHP with the market regulator SEBI. The IPO comprises an entirely fresh issue by the company with no offer for sale component. Oyo's founder and CEO Ritesh Agarwal is set to increase his stake in the hospitality chain with an additional investment of 550 crore rupees. Now, this comes on the back of the firm eyeing global expansion. Agarwal is set to buy over 12.9 crore shares at 42.6 rupees a piece. This will take his stake in the firm from 30% to 32%. The funding will help in financing Oyo's recent acquisitions in the US. On to CNBC TV 18 exclusive. Snapchat's global CEO Evan Spiegel has said that there is a hunger in the US for a new vision after the victory of Donald Trump. Speaking to me earlier today, Spiegel stressed on the need for the new administration to support entrepreneurship and innovation. He also said he's excited by the India opportunity and is betting big on augmented reality. Speaking of social media regulation, Spiegel said he supports regulation that clamps down on hate speech and misinformation across social media platforms. Take a look. Well, let's talk about what's happening in the US at this point in time. And I remember you did a podcast for the BBC, or you curated one in 2021, I think, and it was about the ideas to reconstruct America. And let me ask you this in the context of what we're seeing happen now with Donald Trump heading back to the White House and, Elon Musk playing the kind of role that he is playing as far as policy making is concerned. How do you see this? Do you believe that this is going to be a transformative period for America specifically? And, what happens in America impacts the rest of the world. How are you reading the changes today?
Yeah, I've always been so interested in, America's progress and some of the big ideas that have come out in American history. Because we're a democracy, we're not sort of centrally planned, but that doesn't mean that there aren't sort of big animating ideas in American history, whether that was, FDR, for example, or Reagan. They both had big ideas that really sort of changed the trajectory of America for decades that followed their presidencies. And so I think it's too early to say whether we're in one of those periods again right now, but I do think there is a hunger in the United States for a new vision, for a new big idea for what the future could look like. And I think one of the reasons why it's interesting, you mentioned Elon Musk, is one of the things America has done really well over the past 250 or so years is innovate. And I think if you look back to, the period of time before America was founded, life expectancy was half what it was today. GDP per capita had stagnated for thousands of years. And I think the innovation that has come out of the United States has played a really important role globally. And so I do think it's important that that continues, that we continue this incredible arc of progress that the United States has been a part of, but also countries around the world have participated in, that I think has really been driven by, democratic ideals and the idea that great ideas can come from anywhere. And we should really support entrepreneurship and innovation to drive productivity.
And you can catch that conversation with Evan Spiegel, CEO of SNAT, at 9:30 p.m. right here on CNBC TV 18. Now, Facebook's parent Meta Platforms has opposed CCI's $213 crore rupee penalty order for anti-competitive practices. The company said it has plans to appeal against it. The regulator ruled that Meta's 2021 WhatsApp policy update on a take-it-or-leave-it basis is an imposition of unfair conditions. The competition watchdog has directed Meta to not share data collected on platforms with other sister companies. Users must be also given a choice to manage their data sharing settings with an option to review and modify their choices. 5 lakh domestic passengers took to the skies for the first time on the 17th of November. This is a record high in India over a 24-hour period. Indigo accounting for 70% of the domestic flights. Madiha is here with more. Madiha, demand certainly looking stronger, but what's the outlook?
Yes, 5 lakh air passengers in a single day. That's a historic milestone, and it followed several days of record-breaking passenger numbers that started from the 8th of November, which had seen 4.9 lakh passengers. This surge in air travel was largely driven by festive season and the long weekend. 17th November, remember, was a Sunday when people returned from their respective destinations. These passengers were flown on 3,173 flights, and around 70% of these flights were operated by Indigo, which commands a 63% market share. But October was indeed a great month for airlines, airports and hotels in general, as 3 major Indian festivals, which is Dussehra, Dhanteras and Diwali, fell in October, allowing people to make travel plans. Now, what also encouraged travelers is the ticket sale by various airlines. Post-Diwali, airlines launched fare sales that spurred bookings, leading to an uptick in both fares and the load factor as demand continued to rise due to the festivals and the long weekend. Now, Mumbai International Airport said it handled over 4.42 million passengers in October, which is of which 3.16 million were domestic and over 1.2 million were international. But while we celebrate the increase in air travel, it is important to note the challenges too. Congestion at major airports has led to flight delays, people missing connecting flights that add to operational costs for airlines. Additionally, October and November saw a spate of hoax bomb threats that caused diversions and increased expenses for airlines, further impacting their profitability.
Madhya, many thanks. Now, over 100 passengers of Air India's Delhi-bound flight were stranded in Thailand's Phuket for 80 hours. The flight was scheduled to take off on the 16th of November and was delayed due to technical failures. It was then rescheduled to the next day on the 17th of November. The flight took off and landed back at Phuket 2.5 hours later. In a statement, Air India said passengers were offered options for full refunds and cancellations and complimentary rescheduling. Up next on India Business Hour, the Delhi High Court summons ChatGPT maker OpenAI after news agency ANI files a case of copyright infringement. Details coming up. And you can also catch all of CNBC TV 18's news and updates on Facebook, X, Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. Delhi's air quality remains in the severe plus category for the second consecutive day. Smog shrouding the national capital, reducing visibility and worsening air pollution. Multiple flights have been disrupted. 22 trains have been delayed. According to the railways, the state's environment minister, Gopal Rai, has asked the union government to undertake cloud seeding for artificial rains to alleviate the situation.
भाजपा सरकार के नेता मास्क बांट करके क्या नौटंकी करके दिखाना चाहते हैं, जिसका केंद्रीय पर्यावरण मंत्री एक मीटिंग बुलाने की स्थिति में नहीं है, वो मास्क बांट करके सड़कों पे नौटंकी कर रहे हैं। भारतीय जनता पार्टी के नेताओं से मेरा निवेदन है, नौटंकी बंद करिए और अपनी सरकारों से बोलिए कि काम करें काम।
High drama in Maharashtra on the eve of voting. Workers of the Bahujan Vikas Aghadi accused BJP's National General Secretary Vinod Tawde of distributing cash to voters even as he denies charges. The Election Commission has stopped Tawde from holding a press conference and filed an FIR against him. Staying with the elections, 38 seats in Jharkhand will go to the polls in the second and final phase tomorrow. This includes the high-profile constituency of Barahit, where Chief Minister Hemant Soren is eyeing a hat-trick. Results for all 81 seats will be announced on Saturday, along with Maharashtra. Manipur continues to remain tense after an urgent meeting. Manipur Chief Minister Biren Singh passed an 8-point resolution which includes urging the centre to review the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. This act confers special powers upon the Indian Army in disturbed areas and legitimizes any actions they may take. Further, the resolution has also sought mass operations against Kuki militants responsible for the abduction and killing of Methi women and children. The resolution was passed after MLAs faced the ire of angry mobs. UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced that India and the UK have agreed to resume free trade talks next year. This after Prime Minister Modi and Starmer met on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Brazil. Remember, the UK-India trade talks were set to resume after the completion of elections in the UK. Meanwhile, the G20 summit has also seen External Affairs Minister Jaishankar meet his Chinese counterpart for the first time since both nations agreed on a patrolling agreement at the border. The Delhi High Court has summoned OpenAI over a copyright infringement case filed by news agency ANI. In a first-ever lawsuit against OpenAI in India, ANI claims that ChatGPT used its news content in an unauthorized manner and violated its intellectual property rights. Rachna joins us with more. Rachna, take us through what the Delhi High Court has said.
ANI has accused OpenAI of using its copyrighted news content without authorization to train ChatGPT, calling it all a violation of intellectual property rights. ANI has also alleged that ChatGPT has attributed false statements to the agency, harming its credibility. However, OpenAI stated that it stopped using ANI's material in October 2024 and has added it to its block list. ChatGPT maker OpenAI also highlighted that it's already defending 13 similar lawsuits in the US, 2 in Canada and 1 in Germany, and no court has ever issued an injunction against it. And for the allegation of false information and misattribution, OpenAI's response was that they never pretended to be perfect. OpenAI also said that the instances of such AI hallucinations are rare and exceptional. The Delhi High Court has now issued OpenAI and asked OpenAI to submit its response in the interim application. The court has also directed to appoint an amicus curiae to help navigate the legal complexity of this issue. The case ties into similar lawsuits worldwide. In the US, authors like Sarah Silverman and Getty Images are suing AI platforms over unauthorized use of their content. In India, fair use is a part of copyright law, which is for research and educational purposes, recreation of the content. But ANI argues that its contents do not qualify for this exception. If ANI wins, it could set a global precedent for how AI platforms use third-party content. So clearly, this is more than just a legal battle. It's a turning point for the coexistence of technology like artificial intelligence and generative AI, content creation and intellectual property. We'll bring you all the updates as the story develops. Back to you.
Rachna, many thanks for joining us. Indian chess grandmaster and 5-time world champion Vishwanathan Anand has said that D. Gukesh could become the youngest world champion. Speaking to CNBC TV 18's Archana Solanki, Anand also warned Gukesh against getting carried away by the stellar run that he's had this year.
We take Gukesh individually. He's the youngest ever candidate in history. Therefore, he could be the youngest ever world champion in history. He's had the better year. He has outperformed Ding, no question about that. But first of all, matches have their own logic. And so here he'll have to fight from the first game. I expect his opponent's form will improve significantly, when confronted with the reality that he's playing the world championship. And second, in an individual match, other dynamics take over. So it's very much a struggle that will begin in a few days. And we shouldn't get too carried away with the past results at this point.
And you can watch that entire interview with the 5-time world chess champion at 10 p.m. tonight, only on CNBC TV 18. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. From all of us here, thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned. The news will continue right here on CNBC TV 18.